Close your eyes and imagine this. One day you are driving a car and suddenly someone crashes into you. You get out of the car to talk to the driver who crashed your car. And then, when you look out his window, he shoots you in your hand with a gun. You are really afraid and you don't know what's happening, so you start running for your life. Then, when the police arrive, you feel relieved because you think that they are going to help you. But everything changes when they tell you that you are arrested for attempting to kidnap the person who shot you earlier. They take you to jail and they tell you that you are part of a group of kidnappers. And they introduce you to your alleged accomplice who you have never seen in your life. And since that day, you spend the rest of your days in prison, although you did nothing. This story happened to Hector Munoz and happens to many people in Mexico for minorities, who are blamed unjustly and injustifiably for not having enough power to defend themselves. Hi everyone, welcome to the first edition I Think, Therefore I Am. My name is Giovanni, and today my team that is integrated by Alondra, Paola, Sebastian, Elena, and myself are going to talk about prisoners' quality of life. So, the first questions that I would like to ask to everyone are: is the Mexican prison system fair? Does it really change in a positive way for prisoners? And does it really help Mexican society? These are some questions that could make us start to talk about this topic. So, now we start.
And why are we talking about that? Well, most of the people don't care about the prisoners' lifestyles because they are not sensibilized with the topic. Also, society has a lot of prejudices of prisoners that must be eliminated. One of these prejudices is that all the people that are inside the prisons are guilty. According to INEGI and economists, 4 out of every 10 prisoners are deprived for their liberty without having a trial, so we don't really know if they are guilty or not, but they are still in jail. It's unbelievable that people are in prison without having a trial. It is inexplicable the way that prisoners feel. In summary, it's worrying that the prison system in Mexico works in this way. This is also because the Mexican population tends to think if the prisoners does not consider the rights of the victim, why should be the rights be respected? So the authorities takes this sociocultural argument to rule in an authoritarian and aggressive way, with the prisoners living aside that they must be subject to legality and respect for the human condition.
Likewise, prisons actually affect people physically and psychologically due to the poor conditions and mistreatments. But why do we dare to say that? Well, today we're going to show you the principal negative effects that prisoners experience since they enter detention, talking in a physical and psychological way. With these arguments, we will show you why it is important to start taking care about prisoners' lifestyle and how we could start making the difference.
So, first of all, we have to bear in mind that the first basic topic that is inevitable to talk about is the overpopulation of prisons. According to Statista, in 2022, most of the prisons in the country are overpopulated. Estado de México with 136% of the overpopulation, Morelos with 93% of the overpopulation, Nayarit with 92%, and Durango with 76%. Also, some data from the 2006 survey of Marcelo Bergman and Elena Azaola give us an idea of the living conditions of the prisoners in overpopulated prisons. 26% of the inmates stated that they do not have enough water to drink. 63% consider that the food provided to them is insufficient. 27% indicated that they do not receive medical attention when they require it. And only 23% said that the institution provides them with the medicines they need. A third of the prisoners think that the treatment received by their relatives when they visit them is bad or very bad. 72% said that they feel less safe in prison than where they lived before. And 57% say they were unaware of the regulations of the penitentiary center where they are being held. So we can see that the quality of life in Mexican prisons is affected by the overpopulation on them.
At this point, we already know that Mexican prisons are characterized by a repressive and a hostile environment, where basic human rights are not respected due not only to the penal system, but also to the cultural and social ideologies. But now let's talk about why. Why do some people tend to believe that the conditions described before are fair for prisoners? Where does their way of thinking come from? Well, as we said at the beginning, Mexican culture tends to think, if the prisoner does not consider the rights of the victim, why should their rights be respected? So the authorities take this socio-cultural argument to rule in an authoritarian and aggressive way with the prisoners, leaving aside that they must be subject to legality and respect for the human condition. So clearly, the violation of the prisoner rights is justified in Mexican prisons according to their culture. When torture has historically been condemned, prohibited, and sanctioned by various international humanitarian law documents, without exception. That's why even authorities think they have the right to decide who deserves torture, or in what situations someone deserves to be tortured. Because we live in a culture where consequentialism rules, which means that their morality is based on the consequences that an act brings. In other words, they don't care if the act to reach a goal is good or bad. They just focus on the goal. That's why they consider torture morally good. Due to this practice, information can be obtained from the criminal. However, we have to keep in mind that in Mexico, the criminal can even be a victim, since 4 out of 10 people in Mexican prisons still don't even have a trial. And in a state governed by law, the authority cannot be allowed to guess what the correct decisions might be, especially with these predictions imply the execution of a deontological, iniquitous, and consequential act indeterminate as torture. In addition, in the book Los Malditos, we can see a perfect example of the torture of the prisoners by the authorities, since this is the story of the author Jesus Lemos. He was a Mexican journalist who was indicted for a crime. In that book, we can see all the physical tortures that prisoners experience from the authorities and also from other prisoners. Likewise, in the documentary Duda Razonable, we can watch videos of the police abusing their power. So, it was and is still proof that the treatment inside the prisons is not the best.
But also, some people tend to think life in prisons could be even a luxury. So, is it really a luxury or just a right? According to a secret investigation of Milenio, living with dignity or as any person would have a cost in Mexican prisons, knowing that 7 out of 10 Mexican prisons are controlled by the same higher-ranking prisoners. It was to be expected that corruption will predominate in this. In just 4 prisons in the country, around 300,000 pesos per month are paid in informal fees. For example, some fees are change of clothes, 20 pesos, bed made of cement and a blanket, 100 pesos, sell outputs from 5 to 10 pesos, sleep lying down, 100 to 200 pesos a week, internal security from 2,000 to 5,000 a month, drinking water 10 pesos, and personal cleaning from 15 to 50 pesos. These ones being a little of the fees are the most essential to live with dignity. Considering that more than a half of the prisoners came from unfavorable conditions and from families in poverty, it is suspected that they won't pay even half of the main fees, so the minimum rights are luxuries, causing a deplorable life and consequently poor physical and mental health.
Now, after seeing some physical conditions that prisoners could experience, we can mostly agree with the main argument, but it is worth evaluating also psychological effects that prisoners could face, so we could have a better perspective. And we would like to start by saying that Mexican prison system generates losing perception of human being. According to the prison system in Mexico, prisons are strict systems where prisoners' lives are completely controlled from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So it is obvious that there are too few decisions that prisoners could take, and they start to become puppets. We even have seen this in movies. Prisoners do all what authorities tell them to do. So they kind of live like slaves due to the fact that they can't have the opportunity to choose their own decisions. But how can this affect their psychological health? Well, according to Altamirano, 2013, lifestyle with few controls produces constant lack of self-realization because since prisoners enter in prison, they start the process of prisionalization, where they start to lose independence and follow all the rules of the prison. Therefore, they start to experience despersonalization.
At the same time, deprivation of liberty affects the prisoners emotionally since the moment they set foot in jail. How can they not be affected if one day all their lives change completely? They leave their places to start to live fair enough in another place, which society has stereotyped as a dangerous and aggressive place. Prisoners experience anxiety. The degree of anxiety is inversely proportional to the level of knowledge of the prison environment. Since admission, the level of anxiety of the individual increases significantly, causing high emotional tension. Despite the constant contact between the prisoners and their families or friends, the estrangement from their social circle and the abandonment of the role that the individual had in it becomes inevitable. So they start to experience sadness, depression, anger, distress, and other negative emotions. Also, in prison, people could overreact or exaggerate to simple situations that outside of the prison are normal. This is because they start to give importance to the situations they face, so it's inevitable to not be affected emotionally.
Finally, also the continuous stress that prisoners feel affects their mental health. The word stress is a concept that has a lot of definitions by many authors, but most of the definitions agree that stress is a response to threatening or tense situations. According to a study by Jones in 1976 in the United States, it was found that stress levels in prisons are 3.6 times higher than the stress levels in the general population. This is due to the fact that from the first moment they enter, they face situations of uncertainty, as well as the fact that they are deprived of relations with the outside world and the activities that are carried out in it. Also, in the psychological aspect, constant stress can lead to cognitive and performance problems. In this way, if the person is exposed to constant stress, they may have problems perceiving situations and emotions, being able to have mental health problems.
Can you see all the negative effects that Mexican prisons bring to prisoners? The same prisoners who could even be found not guilty. We hope that most of your prejudices have been shattered and you start to ask yourself other things, like how worrying the Mexican prison system is. So you could begin to realize that prisons' lives are not easy, and maybe you can stop having stereotypes. Or do you need to wait to be the main character of the story, like Hector or the Mexican journalist understand the injustices that are lived inside these prisons? We hope not. To finish this reflection, and with all the arguments present, is it worth to ask the next question? What is the main objective of Mexican prisons? Because as we can see, there are a lot of negative consequences that prisons generate to people. Well, according to the Constitución Política de los Estados Unidos Mexicanos, the main objective of the prison system must be the social reintegration and assurance that the individual does not commit a crime again. So, with the arguments present, do you consider that Mexican prisons are doing the things correctly? Or is it time that Mexican society wakes up and makes noise to start to make the change?